Guys, it's another generation of GPUs where it's like, hey, wait for AMD. AMD is gonna have the best performance, best value. You shouldn't buy the NVIDIA option, but then everybody goes out and buys NVIDIA anyways because nobody really cares, and NVIDIA has like a 90% market share or something like that at this point. And when the 50 series was revealed from NVIDIA, it was like, hey, it looks very strong.
And here's the whole family, starting from 5070 all the way up to 5090. 5090, twice the performance of a 4090. Of course, we're producing at very large scale availability starting January.
I was pretty excited for it at first, and then when you broke it down a little bit, it's like, oh, the performance really isn't that great. The 5070 Ti just came out. I've done some testing on it, and if you actually test this at reference spec, yeah, the performance is barely noticeable with the RTX 5080 over the 4080. It just is barely noticeable. These barely a new generation at all. And then when you actually want to try to buy one, okay, you see these on the market. What the f is happening? You know, here's the RTX 5080 on Newegg. How is it 65% more expensive than the MSRP at $1,000?
The more you buy, the more you save.
So many of these models, if you just scroll down, they aren't at MSRP. I don't even know if you could buy a 5080 at MSRP right now, which would maybe be illegal. I'm not 100% sure. Don't see any. Do you guys see any? I don't see any. So the 5080 is not available. The 5090 isn't really available either. The GPU that just launched, the 4070 Ti, terrible too. I mean, you can buy maybe one or two models here at $750, which is the MSRP price. Like, let's be for real. Are they going to restock the ones that are the cheapest ones? Like, they have no reason to do so. And there's even models of the 5070 Ti that go for $1,000. That stacks up to the price of a 5080. The 5080 is supposed to be $1,000. But not only this, but there's been manufacturing issues with these GPUs. There's freaking missing ROPs on these GPUs. So a ROP, I forget what it stands for. It renders rasterized graphics in a lot of games, which means you could get like 4% performance loss because some of their 5090s, their 5070 Ti's, and we've also seen some of the 5080s have had less ROPs on them. Like, they were coming from the factory not fully made. And they basically want you to reach out to the board partner that you bought your GPU from and get a replacement for it. But how the hell are you going to get a replacement when things like this look like this? Okay, they're all out of stock. That's not the only thing you might want to try to get an RMA for, because look here, the freaking cables, Der Bauer showed this, the cables on 5090s are melting again. So 4090s had melting cable problems, and imagine paying $3,000 for a goddamn GPU, and then it still freaking melts and destroys itself. And Buildzoid even showed with this generation, he drew little fire symbols. How the hell does this even happen? NVIDIA made the connector on these new GPUs actually worse than the old connector on the 4090. Now the 4090 didn't have a great one, obviously it was melting, but now there's like no safety checks in the GPU, how the power flows through it, in order to make sure power is distributed properly and won't overheat one of the cables. Then there's this technology called PhysX. It was something like a physics engine that NVIDIA used to put into games and stuff and used to market their GPUs on. Nowadays, they don't really use it nearly as much, but the 5090 doesn't support older versions of PhysX. I'm going to hide my camera here. You can see on the left side, PhysX isn't running, which despite it not running, it still runs slower on the 5090 versus the 4090. So the 5090 is losing to the previous generation counterpart, even though it costs more and it's being scalped right now. But then if you turn on PhysX in the game, the freaking performance drops off a cliff. Like, how is a $3,000 GPU getting 20 FPS in a game? That's because NVIDIA isn't supporting some of their old technologies. Now, do I really blame them? Like, I'm a little bit back and forth with it. Maybe they're just phasing out the technology, but it's really stupid. Why do you pay that much and you can't get backwards compatibility? I don't understand it. We don't want to also forget about this guy here. He bought an RTX 5080, and then when he packed it out of his box, when he got out of the box, the GPU said 5090 on it. So if this gives you any idea of how organized NVIDIA is being with this generation of GPUs, they put the wrong cooler on a 5080. Like, this is a 5080, but it looks like a 5090 and it's labeled like a 5090. How many problems can this generation have? Now, back in January during CES 2025, we kind of thought like, oh, AMD was making a bad decision. They were supposed to reveal their new generation of GPUs during this event. They had it all prepped, but then at the end of the day, this is what we heard.
We look forward to telling you more about RDNA 4 and FSR 4 later this quarter.
They basically said nothing about them. Even though there was actually press slides available explaining the architecture, board partners and stuff literally had GPUs at CES at the time and everything. It was stupid that they delayed it. It seemed stupid. Honestly, given everything that's gone wrong here, the performance of these NVIDIA GPUs, all the problems that they've launched with, the stock, the price, if AMD messes this up, they gotta be stupid. Okay, like they have to be stupid. There's still one more GPU that's been announced by NVIDIA that's still yet to come out, and that is RTX 5070, and that guy's going on March 5th, and it's $550. The 5070 doesn't look like it's gonna be that much better than the 4070, so it's gonna be the same story, it feels like, that has been plugging 50 series, might be 10% faster, so I don't know if it's gonna be even that relevant at the end of the day. And that's where we come to this. So AMD has officially announced that they're going to be announcing or revealing their new GPUs on February 28th. I'll probably be live streaming this, the reveal, but we have so much information to go over in this video too. We've also seen some rumors that reviews, and I have no clue on this honestly, but reviews are rumored to be going up on March 5th, which would be interesting because that's the exact same day that the RTX 5070 launches. If that is true, that's gonna suck for reviews and stuff, so hopefully they delay it a little bit because that's a lot of testing and a lot of video making. But we have performance numbers, we have release dates, and we even have pricing on the new AMD GPUs. So like right here, Furmark is just like a benchmark program. I've actually never used it, but it does give you some numbers. It had a score of, it had 7,979 points, and that sits it right in between the XT and the XTX, but really close to the XTX in terms of performance. And that really does add up as we look at the other performance results that we've seen. AMD has had somebody like leak them specific information about the performance of the 9070 and the 9070 XT. And this looks like an official slide from AMD. It matches up with how they usually make their stuff. That is supposed to be 42% faster than the 7900 GRE. We can extrapolate this and get tons of performance numbers about this here, but I think it's a little weird for them to compare against the 7900 GRE. It wasn't a super popular GPU, but maybe that could be the price point they're targeting. Now, videocards.com here has a chart with all the data they got. It's like there's 30 plus games, but there isn't actually 30 plus games shown here. We see the 9070 versus the 7900 GRE. That'll be one of the GPUs, and then the 9070 XT versus 7900 GRE. Now, some of these things are rasterized performance in games, and then some of them are ray tracing. They have this total down here that the 9070 versus 7900 GRE, 20% faster at 1440p. It's 21% faster at 4K. And the 9070 XT versus 7900 GRE is supposed to be 38% faster at 1440p and the 42% faster at 4K. But I don't think this chart that videocards.com is really giving us the whole picture. And that's why I went ahead and made this out a little bit here and put this into my photo editing program called Affinity Photo. And we can take this and break it down based on the rasterization performance, based on the ray tracing performance, to give you an idea of this. If you want to just screenshot this, here's this image here. Now I want to break down the ray tracing performance versus the rasterized performance, because honestly, I don't think a lot of people actually care about ray tracing performance as much as maybe you'd want to think. I mean, you kind of want it for future proofing, as long as your game looks good. We've seen games recently like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 that doesn't use ray tracing, runs super well. So here's a 9070 versus 7900 GRE, 1440p. It is 17% faster than the 7900 GRE. And if we go ahead and we turn on the 4K one, it's 19% faster at 4K. Now, something interesting about these new GPUs is they don't have improved memory, at least as far as I can tell. So I don't think the VRAM is going to be faster as you go up in resolution. Usually VRAM matters, like the speed of the VRAM matters quite a bit. So I don't think we're going to see like massive improvements on these higher resolution results. I'm assuming that'd be the reason for it, but it still looks pretty good, and they sell 16 gigabytes of VRAM, both of these, the 9070. Now if we go ahead and just average these, I mean, it doesn't take a genius to see this, that it's 18% faster in rasterization versus 7900 GRE. And these are AMD's results, but they're also internal results. They could cherry pick this data, but we also see results like F1 2024 here. That's pretty low. Same with Space Marine 2 that aren't that crazy, so it doesn't seem like they're super cherry-picked results. Go down here to the ray tracing results. The 1440p ray tracing, it's 26% faster. So just straight up at first, you can already notice a difference between these two. 17%, 19% here, and it's 26% in ray tracing. So they're giving a disproportional increase in ray tracing performance for this generation. It isn't massive here though, and it's still, as we'll see when we actually go through here and we compare it to other GPUs that are available right here, it isn't usually gonna be like an absolute game changer. Like AMD GPUs are still gonna struggle again in ray tracing versus NVIDIA GPUs, but it should be better. Okay, maybe it's manageable in some games, like if they have built-in RT, like in Indiana Jones, and you could get away with it. It's 26% faster at 4K too. So I don't know if you could calculate the average between these two, but it's 26% faster at 1440p and 4K in ray tracing versus the 7900 GRE. That's not bad, okay? It really depends on the price at the end of the day. If AMD is smart with this, they should make this 9070 a pretty cheap GPU. Now let's go ahead and check out the 9070 XT. Now 1440p, and it really depends on the price on this one because the 7900 GRE was $550. And this guy is beating it at 1440p by 33%. Now the 7900 GRE was a 1440p GPU as well, or is advertised as that, and 33%, if it's at the same price, that could be performance that we were used to generations ago, a 30% increase. I think that it would have to be the same price. Like, this is my theory, it would have to be the same price as a GRE in order to be exciting, actually maybe convince people to get this GPU. But the thing is, because NVIDIA, here's the 4K result as well, so you can take a look at that, 33% or 37% at 4K, so actually a pretty decent uplift there. Because NVIDIA didn't see a very major generational increase with their 50 series graphics cards, like this allows AMD to catch up. Now here, 35% on average rasterization. Again, I think most people care about rasterization, and 35% is pretty goddamn good. We can compare it to the other GPUs in just a second, but let's go ahead and check out the ray tracing results just real quick. Now at 1440p, 50% faster. 50% is pretty crazy. And that's a big generational uplift. Now, does that mean good performance with ray tracing? That's what we're gonna have to check. And at 4K, 53%. So at least on this GPU, it does scale, at least based on these numbers, it scales a little bit better going to 4K, both in rasterization and in ray tracing. Rocket scientists to figure this out, 52% faster on average in ray tracing versus 7900 GRE. That's what these look like in terms of their 1440p 4K rasterization performance and the ray tracing performance based on AMD's numbers here. Now these are leaked numbers. I doubt at this point if these GPUs are really going to change the performance that much, but these could technically change, so take it with a slight grain of salt, but I really doubt it. There's so much data here. Now we can also extrapolate here based off of these percentages, how much faster the 9070 XT is versus the 9070. And that can really inform us a lot on the price, like where should these be priced? Because AMD has a history, like with the 7900 XTX and the XT, those GPUs were priced way too close. They're only $100 apart, and that made the XT just completely worthless at launch. Literally, they're cucking themselves if they do that kind of stuff. You can extrapolate these numbers. The 9070 versus 9070 XT, 14% faster in rasterization and 21% faster in ray tracing. Now they do have the same VRAM and stuff, so that those differences aren't there. But in order to make one GPU look more attractive, say like this 9070 XT, for example, or something was $550. If you were to drop down, I would think the 9070 with this performance, to be honest, I think would need to be like $450. It's debatable if that's something they'd be able to achieve, but I think that's probably something they should try to achieve. We can also take this performance here, comparison with other GPUs that are available. So here, I got some data from Hardware Unboxed. Yeah, we can place these GPUs in their charts and see where they'll actually line up. You might see in here, and it might be a little bit confusing, Hardware Unboxed on this particular video that came out recently that with the 5070 Ti, they didn't test the 7900 GRE, unfortunately. You see here, I went to one of their other videos, this one with the 7900 GRE review. I extrapolated based on their charts in this video to see how much difference performance is. It's maybe not perfect, but I think the numbers line up pretty close to where we expect these new GPUs to perform. So the first thing to look at, and depends on the price of this GPU, but the 9070 is getting 118 FPS rasterized at 1440p, which places it right between a 7900 XT, which is a fast GPU from the last generation. It started at $900. If this new GPU were to be $450, $500 or something like that, that would be an exciting generational uplift. We haven't seen an exciting generational uplift in a while, but that wouldn't be something that would be out of the ordinary from what we've seen in the past. New GPUs that are like mid-range, say like the RTX 3070, when that launched, it performed like a 2080 Ti but the 3070 was $500, not $1,200. The generational uplift that we were kind of used to, that a mid-range GPU would match the flagship of the last generation. You know, if this was matching the 9070 and 118 FPS, if it was matching the 7900 XT, I mean, that would be a pretty good performance uplift. And I think that would be pretty exciting if it did cost like maybe $450, you know, something like that. And then it also does compare to what is NVIDIA offering. I mean, I would expect the 5070 to probably be sitting in around here about a 4070 Super, 4070 Ti. That's where I would expect that new GPU to sit. That's a $550 5070. I don't even know if it'll perform that well, to be honest, but somewhere in this range. Now the 9070 would be beating that GPU. If it costs $100 less than the 5070 at $450, then that'd be a really attractive GPU, and it would have 16 gigabytes of VRAM versus the 12 gigabytes of VRAM, improved ray tracing performance, all that kind of stuff. Also, this is the 9070 XT at 134 FPS, and that would be sitting, and this lines up with results that we've seen already. It'd be sitting right between a 5070 Ti and a 4080, a 7900 XTX. It'd be right in this range, which again, the 7900 XTX, I mean, just think about it. This was a $1,000 GPU. In some parts of its life, it was going for $800. And we also look at the 4080, that was a $1,200 GPU, and then the 4080 Super ended up being a $1,000 GPU. Could AMD achieve really competitive pricing here? I mean, the performance could match up really, really well. It'd be beating NVIDIA's new 5070 Ti, which we've seen go for absolutely ludicrous prices. The 5070, I mean, this would blow it out of the water, because there's no way NVIDIA's new GPU, the 5070, is really more quick. It can't be more quick than the 5070 Ti, of course, but it's probably around this range. So this new GPU would be beating it by a ton while costing the same price and having more VRAM at that price point. I don't know which GPU will actually compete with the 5070. It's pretty similar results at 4K. The 9070 XT is right in between the 5070 Ti, and in this case, the 4070 Ti Super, but it's really not far behind the 4080 and that kind of stuff. And we see here the 9070 would be getting 67 FPS based off of these like results and everything, and that would be placing it right below the 7900 XT, right above the 4070 Ti. That would probably be faster than what the 5070 would be. We can also check out ray tracing, and this is where it really doesn't start to look as good. So this is just 1440p ray tracing, but it's debatable how useful ray tracing will be even if you turn it on. I mean, maybe this is good enough performance for you to get by. 9070 XT, it was up there in performance with the 4080 5070 Ti. You can see that it drops way down here to basically what would be 4070 levels of performance. Now the 5070 probably won't be a ton ahead of the 4070, so it would be within range of NVIDIA's offering if they're around the same price point. The 4070 though, I mean, this isn't very impressive ray tracing. I think on a 4070 that I have, like, I would almost never turn on ray tracing on that GPU. So we can also see this here. Here's the 9070. It's going to be between an XT and an XTX, slower than a 4070 and a bit faster than a 3070 in terms of ray tracing. Now, I don't know where a 4060 or a 4060 Ti stacks up here, and I don't know what NVIDIA's 60 class cards are going to look like in terms of ray tracing performance. It seems like AMD improved ray tracing a lot, but maybe not enough, and it depends on the price. I don't know if they're going to market their GPUs on this. Now, more games are starting to use ray tracing, and it's becoming more of a reality, but the thing is, some of the games like Indiana Jones that actually require ray tracing in the game, usually they're not asking for this crazy level of ray tracing performance. I have GPUs from RDNA 2, so that's like an old generation that had awful ray tracing performance on AMD. They perform just fine enough in that game. I don't really think it's always that big of a deal. Maybe in some games, if your performance is high enough, then you'd be able to turn on some light ray tracing, like say in Cyberpunk. I think that's where these new GPUs are going to be shaping up, where it's getting to that point where you might turn it on sometimes. Let's get into that price, because I was saying like, oh, $550 for the 9070 XT, maybe $450 for the 9070 would be like, those would be like, oh, that's a really good deal and very much worth considering. AMD does have to be the hands down competition. That's why it scares me when I've seen leaks like this. So AMD has some models out from XFX. They were listed on a site. This was leaked out. We see things like the 9070 was being listed for $650. 9070 XT was being listed for $750, $770, freaking $820, $850. And it also says this item will be released on March 6th. So that's possible that's the release date. Canadian website. And that meant that the 9070 XT was like $865, $767, about $700. If NVIDIA's GPUs, the 5070 Ti was actually $750 and it performed the same as this, and then this GPU would only be $50 less than that, that wouldn't make any goddamn sense because the NVIDIA GPU has better ray tracing performance, it has DLSS. And I don't think AMD will do these prices. I think these are placeholder prices. But it scares me because they changed the naming scheme for this generation of GPUs. Now they're going to like a 9070, 9070 XT. Whereas before they used to do a 7900, 7900 XT, GRE, you know. They changed this so that they were more comparable to NVIDIA. And it's like, well, are they charging $750 for a 9070 XT because it's supposed to compare to a 5070 Ti? But what does give me a little bit of encouragement is this here, and I didn't expect this to happen at all, but we see here that Hardware Unbox on Twitter, AMD has emailed us directly asking for our opinion about pricing. So this does get my hopes up a little bit that they're at least talking to people that have a level head on their shoulders. Now, what is Hardware Unbox's information?
Based on the performance we've seen from the 5070 Ti and what we know from the XTX, I feel like the 9070 XT needs to cost no more. Like the absolute highest price they can charge for this to be a success, in my opinion, is $550 US.
Like the market share numbers, guys, they're really bad.
They want the 9070 XT, and I've been referencing this in the video because I agree with this. It needs to be $550 in order to be like, this is a hands down thing in terms of the performance and everything. Oh, you'd be stupid not to buy this. Okay, that's what AMD needs, even if it means a very, very large hit to their margins. Like they might not be making that much money on these GPUs. I've always thought short term, and that's been killing them, bleeding them market share and people wanting to get their GPUs. And they need to just bite the bullet, take the hit, and allow people to just get a good value GPU. Now, Hardware Unbox also went through and they clarified that this is the information that they told AMD, because someone in the, I don't go on Twitter, so I don't really know what this is, but they replied to the Hardware Unbox thing or quoted it or something like that. They said that AMD emailed them directly. And then this person said, I mean, I'm glad that they want input from guys like Steve, but if Radeon is reduced to asking YouTubers for advice on how they should price their products, then it's over, which I kind of agree with. But Hardware Unbox did confirm down here, the advice that they gave them are the numbers that they have been talking about publicly, like $550 for the 9070 XT. I'm not sure about the 9070, what they've been saying there. I would want that GPU to be at $450. Like that would be a solid option. And the 9070 XT would be competing directly price to price with the 5070 from NVIDIA. So what does AMD need to do? So the performance is good. Okay, that's one thing that AMD's got going for them. And then the price also needs to be good. Okay, and I would think $550, honestly, they wanted to be super competitive, like, oh my God, you have to buy this GPU. $500 would be that price point. And NVIDIA might not even have their GPUs like the 5070 actually costing $550 anyways. So it could be like in its own land, you know, no competition and stuff. So they would need a good price. The performance is there, but a good price as well. And then the last thing, because AMD has delayed their GPUs, they're also only releasing 2 GPUs. And they're using things like GDDR6 in order to get more volume, it seems like, because GDDR6 is an older memory standard, which would mean that AMD could make more of these GPUs, because the last thing that AMD needs to get down with this launch needs to be their supply. If NVIDIA can't supply GPUs like we're seeing right now, if AMD can't make enough supply, then they're going to be irrelevant. Because I know a lot of people want to upgrade GPUs, but they can't really get a good option right now. So there's the big 3 things that AMD needs to focus on to have a very, very competitive GPU. There's other things like its ray tracing performance and its upscaling, like being better. That'd be very important too, but those would maybe be like 4 and 5, but not quite as important as these big 3 at the beginning. All the stars have aligned for AMD here to be very competitive. And if they fumble this launch, then I actually am completely done with AMD. They don't even want to compete at this point. They need to take a hit to their margins to really make an impact here. This is the best time. Like if they fumble this, it'd be so stupid, guys. Like, it'd be so stupid. So let me know what you think about this in the comments below. But a lot of stuff has come out and I really wanted to talk about it. So I'm gonna see you guys in the next video. Y'all have a good one and join me for the stream. I'll probably upload another video before this, but I'll be reacting to the launch live of the 9070 XT on Friday at 8 a.m. Eastern. It's pretty early in the morning. So we'll be checking that out, breaking it down, having some fun for real this time. Last time they faked us out, but all right, I'm gonna see you there. You have a good one and peace.